Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, we're going to be breaking down two of our altcoins that we've covered extensively over this last year. They're breaking out and making a massive move as we're starting to see one of them going into a new all-time high. We've talked extensively about layer 2s, why I believe that they're going to see some of the most adoption long-term, especially inside of this next bull run. And so for today's video, we're going to be breaking down these altcoins, explain exactly why I think that these are going to be primed for much more upside to come, and how we can look to capitalize on these ecosystems and some of the altcoins inside of them before they take off. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and in yesterday's video we talked about Metis, why I believe that this one was going to end up doing so well and get so much adoption long term. We're already seeing it break out even higher. We were talking a little bit about how it followed along perfectly to the Wall Street cheat sheet, and we're seeing a lot of different altcoins doing this. As we're seeing Metis reversing, a lot of the reason Metis is reversing has a lot to do with the other leading layer 2s inside of the market, and the first one is really just Optimism. We've talked a lot about Optimism recently, and it was just last week that we covered it, and we talked about it because of the fact we were looking at a major reversal point. Now, we've been covering Optimism extensively over the last few months, and it really was because we broke out of this double bottom formation. We broke out of the double bottom and our descending resistance at the exact same time, and then it was in my last video, we were right here just barely retesting the prior high. We had just broken out of this resistance, and then we had just retested that as new support. So we knew that this was a complete trend reversal. So seeing the market take off in this big way, I mean, it's a little surprising to see one giant green candle, but at the same time, it's not as surprising considering the entire reason I've been covering it is because Optimism has stacking one waves. And it's been one of the most bullish setups I've ever invested in long term. I knew that this was going to take off in a big way because of the whole layer 2 movement. We're seeing layer 2s take off because Ethereum sucks. If any of you guys actually use Ethereum, whether it's to just send a token to a MetaMask wallet or to your friend, whether it's to participate in DeFi, buy an NFT, whatever it is, it's expensive. I just spent $50 on a gas fee, whether it was last week or a couple weeks ago. I don't remember exactly when, but it was $50. I know that much. And the amount of times I've spent $20 to $30 is, too many to count. In the bull market, I was spending over $200. And if you were trying to participate inside of any sort of mint for an NFT, it was thousands of dollars. So it's a big issue in crypto, and that's exactly why layer 2s are taking off in such a big way. We're seeing much adoption in this sector because of the fact DeFi has to participate inside of an affordable network. Binance is not that network because of the fraud that's currently taking place, their prior CEO. Now what we're seeing inside of the market is the market moving towards alternative means. We saw all of the centralized exchanges go bankrupt, so DeFi is already trying to gravitate and go decentralized because we can't trust centralized exchanges anymore or lenders. So that's all moved to the chain, and now we're already seeing all of that money actually flocking towards layer 2s because of the fact most layer 1s necessarily aren't cut out for it, don't have the adoption that ETH does. ETH has that first mover's advantage, so its network effect is much greater than anything else in the market. So even though it sucks and it's slow, the majority of the market share is still dominated over there. DeFi is slowly shifting because the average person can't trade on a decentralized exchange using Ethereum because the gas fee is being too high. So if we want to use an actual perpetuals decentralized exchange or an options decentralized exchange, anything like that, it has to run on an efficient network, and these layer 2s are the only things that exist that provide that. So as we're starting to see Optimism taking off, I do believe that this takes us into a much bigger parabolic move because, like I stated guys, stacking one waves are what happened right before a major wave 3 impulse takes place. So seeing this thing just run straight to $10 would not even slightly surprise me. I've been accumulating this because I know I've seen this pattern 100 million times before by staring at these charts for 8 years, and I've made so much money trading these that I'm really looking forward to holding this cycle because many of our different altcoins are starting to take off, and all we really have to do right now is just look to hold, look to maximize the fullest potential of the cycle. One of the things with Optimism that I want you guys to be aware of, if we come over here and actually look at the total value locked inside of the Optimism chain, we're going to notice that as the price is breaking and making a new all-time high, or on the verge to, the total value locked is still, way below those prior all-time highs. So the total value locked peak was actually $2.5 billion, a little over, and we're currently sitting at just over $1 billion. We just cracked that $1 multi-billion-dollar level. So as it stands for Optimism, this thing's still pretty far below those prior all-time highs. It's currently front running the layer 2 market. It's the first one to really start breaking out and making a new all-time high. So I do think that the price is going to continue to kind of do that. But big picture with Optimism, I think it's something to note that it's not necessarily seeing as much TVL adoption, as much DeFi adoption as maybe some of the other chains, even though the price is taking off. Now, the next one we wanted to cover today is Arbitrum, and Arbitrum's really been the main one that I've been talking a lot about. We talked a lot about it before the airdrop, and many people actually ended up getting access to that airdrop because of it. So shout out to anybody that did. I've personally invested a lot of my portfolio into the Arbitrum ecosystem, not so much the token of Arbitrum, but the ecosystem of tokens building inside of that network, because I do believe that the epicenter of DeFi will take place majority inside of Arbitrum. So when we're looking at this, Arbitrum is reversing too. We're seeing Arbitrum making this big breakout. It's obviously not outperforming Optimism, but we got to keep in mind it has a higher market cap, and we're going to see, some of those end up outperforming the ones that are a little bit more undervalued. We broke out of the double bottom, and now we're seeing continuation. So we're expecting this thing to go into a new all-time high. We're more or less just covering the same stuff that we covered in that last video. I think we're going to be looking at something along the lines of this, where we might rally to those prior all-time highs, see a pullback back down, kind of retest this prior level, being like here as new support before we see continuation. Big picture, I do believe we're seeing a new all-time high. The Arbitrum chart looks exactly the same as many different airdrop tokens I've personally invested in and have traded. If we come over here and look at Ethereum, even though this wasn't an airdrop, this is kind of the same chart pattern that you're going to see where they get added to exchanges, they make this little correction, and then they go into a new cycle. Uniswap is a better example considering it was an actual airdrop token where they get added to exchanges, they make the listing pump, they correct back down, and then they start that new cycle back up. And Uniswap did like 25x for me, I think, from that airdrop, and so that was a huge winner for me in that last cycle. Another one that did this exact pattern that I can think of is Polka Starter. Made some pretty good profit on this initial run, but we saw the same thing. Listing pump, crash, then we reverse and go into a new cycle. So all we're really looking at with Arbitrum is the same setup. It's the universal pattern of getting added to exchanges, make a listing pump, correction, and then reverse. So I'm looking at that big picture. It's going to end up doing the same thing that Optimism just did right here, where we break out, we retest that level, and then we get continuation. The only difference is Optimism is just leading. But we covered Midas DAO in yesterday's video, and we were covering how this chart looks just like it's about ready for a new cycle. We're basically in the disbelief phase. The same thing is taking place in all of these. Optimism is about to make a new all-time high, so it's obviously leading. But Arbitrum is pretty much just leaving the disbelief phase right now. It's making a new high. It's making our first higher high. We're starting to make a new high from even that. So really total continuation from this point. And one of the cool things about Arbitrum, now we can actually come over here and look at the total value locked in Arbitrum, and we can see that it's sitting at a new all-time high. So even though the price of Arbitrum isn't sitting at a new all-time high, the total value locked is. And I think that that's a much, much more important metric to be gauging. Considering when we're looking at the total value locked between Arbitrum and Optimism, they're very different from each other. Even though the token price of Optimism is breaking out and about to go into a new all-time high, the TVL of Optimism is actually way below those prior all-time highs. They have broken out, don't get me wrong. I do think that we're about to be starting a next leg up, but when we're comparing Optimism and Arbitrum, Arbitrum is already breaking out again. It's been consolidating and more or less coiling right at these prior all-time highs, and that's something that I think is a big difference between the two chains. The smart money is already positioned where they think that the real value is, and it's obvious to tell where the real smart money is positioned because, Arbitrum TVL is already breaking out, whereas Optimism is clear down here. So I think that that's the big picture thing we need to pay the most attention to. We ultimately invested into our Optimism because of the fact we needed to diversify in the layer 2 niche. It's the same reason why I bought Midas DAO. If you're going to end up finding a narrative that you think is going to play out, you got to end up positioning yourself in a few different coins inside of that narrative. Don't get me wrong, there's people that go all in on one and get rich, and that's a possibility you can do too. But for me, I like diversification. I always like to do that because I feel it puts me at a better advantage over the market. And what I've noticed is this is such a high demand area and a niche in this market for the cycle because there's so much issues with layer ones, mainly just because Ethereum's the only one with real adoption. Maybe you could throw Solana in the mix, but there's really nothing going on inside of Solana, inside of the ecosystem, besides just Solana itself. So when we're looking at DeFi, it's either going to go one place or another. It's going to end up trickling into some of these like it always does. But when we're looking at DeFi, I think that a lot of it's going to be participating inside of these layer 2s. And a layer 2 is going to end up supporting a lot of that. We're seeing that the real TVL is obviously finding itself inside of Arbitrum, which is why it's been my most important pick going into the cycle. But we should expect to see that the rest of the markets are also going to end up taking off too. So I wanted to break things down more or less just talking about where we could head from here. If we want to look a little bit about targets before we finish this video, let's talk a little bit about our primary target for this. Now in Optimism, our lowest target would be about $5.20, and that's just our minimum target for this wave 3, because with this was wave 1, wave 2, and now this is wave 3. So we have to go to at least the 1618 for this to be a confirmed wave 3, and I think that that's where we're going to be headed in the short term, even though I think we're going to far surpass that. Generally speaking, inside of a wave 3, it's going to end up extending all the way up to around the 2618. It's going to be about double the size of wave 1, and sometimes it can go even higher than that. That's the thing, guys. As we're beginning this cycle, you're better off just having the position ready to hold than you are trying to predict price, because I don't know what the prices of these are going to go to. But if this is the institutional cycle, a lot of that DeFi money is going to be propped up by these layer 2s. And what we're seeing is just the beginning stages of that reversal and breakout. So I do think that we're going to be headed to at least, I'd say we're headed to at least $5.20. Like I said, that's the minimum target. But I think we probably end up going closer to about $7.50. And this thing could extend all the way upwards of $10 inside of this next leg. If you see stacking one waves, it's one of the better buys you can get, because it always happens right before a much greater impulse takes place. And I found that you're better off, trying to get in early before that wave 3 comes in than you are trying to guess when the wave 3 or how high the wave 3 is going to get, because oftentimes it extends higher than you think it's initially going to. Now looking at Arbitrum, we're pretty much looking at similar results. The only difference is we don't necessarily have a prior impulse to really look at. I don't know what you would consider this. I mean, if you looked at this, you'd basically be looking at a target of like $2 to $3 as a main target for like a minimum of a wave 3. But when I'm looking at this is a long-term hold. I think we're going to be running into a new all-time high, and we'll have a decent size breakout once we do actually get above those all-time highs. We could run all the way up to $4 to $5 before we end up seeing any sort of big correction back down, going into another high like this. But this is more along the lines of what I would be watching for with Optimism and Arbitrum. We're going to be looking at the entire market to take another leg up, and as that leg up takes place, once the correction kind of sets in, that's going to be the time where we're going to see something like this kind of happen, where these markets take off, they break out, make a new cycle, but then when they go through this decent sized corrective period, as they reconsolidate, some of them are going to retest their prior highs as the true support of the reversal. Some of them won't come all the way back down there, but I think it's expected that we go through some type of consolidation phase before we're ever looking at the next leg up in the cycle. That's just what happens every single bull run. I've always seen it play out in that same sort of way. Assuming Bitcoin doesn't go just straight into a new all-time highs off of this move, I think that this is what we're going to be looking at. And so I'm mainly looking to be holding right now as we've started the reversals, as all of the coins are breaking out. It's just much better to be prepared, be positioned, and be looking to hold instead of trying to second guess where the top is going to be on the local high, or where you could potentially FOMO buy in and you'll still make profit. That's why I've been trying to update you guys with these before they broke out. Now that they're broken out, I don't necessarily expect anybody to buy them, but I still think that these are undervalued long term. So this is what I'm watching for. If you guys found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. If you guys want to end up seeing how I'm investing over the cycle, every single one of these have been signals inside of my group. We've been covering these for months and months and months over this entire year. So if you guys do want to be able to see how we're invested, we're already in a lot of profit on all of these. Arbitrum was one of those that we got access to by just being early for the airdrop, and you guys would have been able to follow along with all of that inside of my group. So if you guys do ever want to just see how I'm positioning myself, anything I'm investing in over this cycle, you got to join the Discord server by signing up on my website, linked below. Inside of the description of this video, you're going to be able to find a number of links, whether it's my socials, whether it's my website to actually sign up for my VIP, all of that. No matter what you guys end up doing, you can check it out. There's a lot of free content that just anybody can follow along with. Whether it's on Twitter, there's a lot of cool stuff I post over there you guys can check out. So make sure you check it all out. With that being said, guys, I appreciate the support, and I will catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.